If you just joined us, this is International Forum taking a look at Georgia's political crisis. Yes, the impact of Russia's influence. That is what, according to report, they are fighting about. So, my analysts definitely will throw more light on this. I have Humphrey Rega, a revered clergyman, wonderful public affairs commentator, political analyst, both local and international politics. He is well-grounded. Reverend, sir, welcome to International Forum. Appreciate your coming. All right. So very close to him is a legal practitioner, public affairs commentator, human rights activist. Joining to welcome Barrister Henry Walls. Barrister, welcome to International Forum.
Wilson, good afternoon, viewers at home. Once again, thank God for being alive.
All right. So Russia is like they don't want to lose out on their region. That's what some people are saying that this fight is all about. For the Ukrainian side, there's a fear of NATO. From Georgian side, there's also this fear of NATO, but luckily for us, according to report, they have an outstanding agreement, and now they want to solidify the agreement into law. And hence, Georgians, they are protesting. Reverend, what do you feel about all this?
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure that the Russian interplay with the once part of the Russian Federation that are separated from them, Putin have never hidden the fact that he needs all of them back. Because for Russia to be the superpower it used to be, it needs all these other so-called independent nations, smaller nations around. Don't forget that when it was the Russian Federation, most of the military wares were housed in some of these countries. And so when they left, Russia couldn't remove all the arms. So Russia has seen that as part of the thing they want to get back, because then there came the expansion of Europe, because the independent nations from Russia Federation do not feel very comfortable with Putin's style of life. So they saw themselves as becoming orphans who need some help, and the European Union were ready to give them the space. Again, we talk about democracy and we talk about autocracy. The small nations like Ukraine, Georgia, and all cherished or wanted to join the independent nations who are democratic in their thoughts and their life. And you know, when people have tasted freedom, it is more difficult to return them to slavery. And so these citizens from Georgia have tasted some elements of freedom and the ability for them to be part of the process of governing their country. And they know that with what Russia is doing in Ukraine, it won't be too long if they are able to conquer Ukraine. To the next thing is Georgia, there was a turmoil before they were able to wade it up and then conducted the election. So there is that influence, and that is what is creating the tension. We do not want, and since some of the lawmakers are friendly to Russia, there is a tendency for them to try to make sure, because Russia does not want any of those states or nations to become members of the European Union. So
okay.
It's a power play within. But unfortunately, like people say in the countries, citizens who are independent-minded are not financially buoyant. Some of those who are in the parliament have been those who are benefited from the Russian influence. And so they are trying to be used as a payback system.
All right.
For them to remain in that environment.
All right. Now, some of you know that Mother Russia, according to some pundits, is embarked in the fight of her survival and the fight of her life. So Russia will use anything possible to make sure that the Russian state is protected by all means and by any cost. And that's the reason why they're trying to fast-track the law in Georgia. They may just have that also as a kind of a pawn in their hands, saying if you can take part of Ukraine, We have some part of eastern Ukraine, which is Donbass region. And of course, Georgia also is in tune, according to their calculation, with Russia. That will make them feel safe. Now, what do you feel about that, Barrister Henry?
But you also find out that you cannot continually cage a people from expressing that which they desire. At a point in time in the life of a people, they will want to enjoy that freedom. Just as he has rightly said, when you taste freedom, it becomes difficult for somebody to bring you back to slavery. These people have tasted it and they have seen that it is a way out for them. You'll find out that actually Georgia, as it were, even before that 2023, when this agitation actually started, heated up, the members of the parliament, because what were actually they said they look at other countries as agents of war, the foreign influence coming to dominate the activities in terms of the Russian law which they were following. But the people are seeing it from a different point of view entirely, and that is why the people are publicly protesting, and that they will no longer want to go back to that the same road they have passed through in the past. But they find out again too that if they allow it, as it were, it is going to impede in a lot of things. Look at all those legal entities who have some financial assistance from other countries. As long as you have up to 20% or more than 20%, as they stipulate, automatically you have an influence from the outside world, as it were. So the civil society groups equally will be affected, in trying to agitate for the better life for the people. Because you find out that in the Russian law, you do not have such powers to determine that which you want, because the government has made it in a way that you have to follow the law as it were. And that is what the people on their own are trying to fight against. So, be that as it may, the law itself, but the Russian law, which is getting them, you find out that this country, as it were, they want to find the freedom which they believe is the only way out. And just as they have applied to the European Union, and they are gradually, they want it to accede to it, as it were. And by the time the European Union decides, they are calculating between now and 2030, that such opportunity would have been given to them to become part of the European Union. So, and once they are, automatically, everything that has to do with them will change in terms of the laws, as it were, in Russia. That is the position.
All right, but everything will just have to change. Now, they say they don't want foreigners. And the question now is, who is more foreign to Georgia? Is it Mother Russia or the EU? Reverend, from your own analysis.
Well, when you talk about foreigners, it is, they look at it from the governmental perspective. Some of the people in Georgia have Russian roots because all of them were the same. But be that as it may, since it has been carved out and internationally regarded as a country, they now owe their citizenship to Georgia. But if you look at what has been happening in Ukraine, part of the places where you find that Russia had had some dominance is where Russian citizens are, and so they still have allegiance to Russian roots. The Russians see the Europeans as foreigners into to the Georgian Federation. So whenever the European Union are trying to do something, they see them as one, and you try as much as possible to get the people to think the way you are thinking. Russia will be saying, let's not bring in foreigners to this place. But Putin will not come to say it. He will use certain elements within the Georgian Federation who owe allegiance to their birth and culture to Russia to say what Putin wants to be said. And that's what is happening. Some people see Europeans as foreigners because they don't have any cultural link with them as much as they are concerned. But you see, those who have Georgian citizenship do not see it the way the Russians see it, because they see themselves as international people. The world is a village, and everybody plays his part. And we all need each other to be able to survive. The economic power that they have received from Europe has made them to be more independent of whatever the Russians would have done. And so that becomes the reason of thinking. As far as they are concerned, you may say we don't have a cultural affinity, but there is a bond that is holding us together, that makes us able to express ourselves and to also develop our economy. And who is more friendly? The one who helps you to develop yourself. And this is all the situation that they found themselves. And this is where the word is. The word foreign is a word that is used by people by reason of understanding. Like somebody said, I can have a friend who is more good to me than my family. I call that friend my family member, based on the relationship. And this is what is happening. And this is what has happened in Ukraine. When Zelensky was elected, he was elected based on the fact that the people saw him as with the attitude of the Westerns, who will give them opportunity to be part of the government, to have a say in what happens, against the Russian candidate, who would have been very much loyal to Putin.
All right.
They voted him out. And that's the same thing that Russia does not want.
To happen in Georgia.
In Georgia.
All right, now I'm going to ask you the same question. Now, who is more of a foreigner? Because they are saying they don't want foreign influence. They are referring to the Russian Confederation. But we have an EU that is not even close to them, as Russians, after all, they used to be one very large state, the Soviet Union, way back. If you take it from this angle, don't you feel that this might just be the hand of the West trying to push out any form of inclination, any form of influence from Mother Russia?
Yes, you look at, so many things comes up, politics, and putting into consideration the war that has been going on in between Ukraine and Russia all the past years, as it were. And you find out that everybody wants to be part of that which will make Georgia a better and a country of its own, standing on its own without paying allegiance to Russia completely, as it were. And you also find out that Russia, in its own part, wants the Russian law to continually, be, implemented, as it were, in Georgia. And the Georgians, on their own, do not want that to remain, and that is why you find out this, the agitation or the protests, as it were, the people wanting to be free from that hold, as it were, from the Russian government. But you also find out that the foreigners, as they classify them, or the European Union as they classify as being foreigners, they are coming in with their own innovations, as it were. You are bringing in the issue of democracy, you are bringing in the issue of the rule of law, you are bringing in the issue of the people, wanting to do things their own way without, certain things being put into place. But you also find out that, and in doing that, the cultural and the thinking of the people will change. It will no longer remain the same. And this is the fear Russia has, because by the time the thinking and the ways of the people changes totally from what it used to be, you find out that whatever it is that has kept them together will now gradually begin to dwindle, as it were. You also find out that the leaders of the Georgia Dream, on their own, they have a strong allegiance to the Russian government. And they do not want that, because from analysis, over 90% of the wealth of the the man, eventually, comes from his, relationship with Russia, which has been there all this while. So automatically, himself will do everything possible to ensure that the laws are there to curb those excesses that will enable the people to continually remain with the Russian laws instead of dancing towards the European Union. But again, you also find out that the European Union on its own, because they have been granted a kind of, have been allowed to be part of the European Union to some extent, as it were. But you find out that sanctions will come, because if you are a part of it, because already you find the Human Rights Committee of the European Union saying that their action somehow has affected, is not in consonant with Article 11 and Article 14 of the Human Rights Commission of the European Union, and which actually allows the people that freedom, that democracy they actually wanted, that rule of law, and their activities to do things the way they want it.
Right.
So automatically, it will have an influence on that.
Okay, it's going to have an influence. Now, it didn't take them up to 48 hours to push that law. And they are almost, to push the bill, and they're almost making it into a law. Not up to 48 hours. Now, despite the rubble they had with Russia a few years ago, to be on their own. Now, they used to see Russia having this influence over Georgia, knowing fully that they were supposed to be independent, but the House chose to opt for that particular law being pushed by Russians.
You see, independence for me is sometimes a word that is used, but reality on ground doesn't allow you to be free from what you are. First of all, Russian gas is what services Georgia. And if you cut that off, the country will have a problem. Most of those who are businessmen have their wealth sourced from Russia. And for those who are also parliamentarians, most of them are also in line with the Russian thought. So you look at the fact that these are issues. That's why it is easy for them to, in minutes, it's not even a day, in minutes they can rush bills through. But you can rush a bill through, but the citizens will have some situations with you if they really decide. But they also know that if the citizens rush things, casualties is going to happen. And most of the time, it is not very okay to lose your life in a manner that is not beneficial. So they look at that and look at some of the things. But the point is, unfortunately, I'm not too sure whether the law may pass. Because if we saw what happened in Ukraine when the election was going to be held, nobody thought that the present president will win, because they believe that the Russian power have been used. It is also going to be the same thing, because the Georgians have already told themselves, citizens have told themselves, they do not want the yoke of Russia on their neck. And if care is not taken, just like the former president of Ukraine has to relocate, most of those who are there now, looking at Russia as their bed, we also have to relocate to Russia, because the place may not be convenient for them, but the people's will prevail. It's not the first time that they're trying to do it. That's why they're trying to do it by law. When they were trying to do it politically before, it didn't work. And they're trying to do it by who makes the law and who obeys the law. These are some of the things. So they need to be very, very cautious of the fact that you don't want your nation to be set on fire. If anything happens in Georgia, it is not Russia that will suffer for it. It is Georgia. What is their primary interest? They should remove their personal ego, their personal interest, and put the interest of the people at heart. What the Russians are aiming at is to cut off funding from all those civil society organizations and all, because those ones are receiving funding from Europe and America. And they feel that if they can't cut off their resources, they might not be able to influence the thing. So it's some of this power play and some of this economic play. But let's see how it goes on. I hope that the people's will prevail.
All right. Reverend raised a very vital point. Knowing fully well that Georgia solely depends on gas from Russia. And of course, most of the business venture, they have the strong link with Russia. I don't think the smart thing to do to allow Russia have their way, even if they'll be independent, rather than bringing in the EU to, like, you know, scuttle the arrangement they have on the ground. After all, it's all about what you can gain. Take it up from there.
Yes, to some extent, one will look at it from that angle. But again, accepted that they depend on the Russian gas, the Georgians. You will find out that when the people are determined to bring a change to themselves, no matter what you do, that change will come. Even if it requires some persons have to spill their blood, as it were. Now, the European Union have indicated, the Georgians indicated interest of joining the European Union. And the European Union, they are ready to accept them to become part of the European Union. They equally will ensure that that which will make them independent, as it were, because the word independent, just as you rightly said, it depends on the way you look at it. To make them really independent, not paying that allegiance to Russia as it were now. They will do that to assist them, to ensure that the issue of the gas or any other assistance they needed to enable them to be democratically independent will be given.
From where?
From Europe, some of the European...
Don't forget that Russia is the one that supplies Europe, and right now, they've accused Russia of waging gas war, so to speak, because they're beginning to reduce the gas supply to Europe, and they are complaining. And talking about the economy depends solely on Russian gas. If they're cut off, who will lose?
Accepted. But you also find out that necessity is the mother of invention. Because at the time we come, it's just like in this part of the world, the BDC have discovered that Nigerians talk about electricity. But today, some persons, like those of us who live at Ugosa and other places, we are going to 2 years. We don't have electricity. But we have decided to find an alternative means of making life meaningful for ourselves. The same thing you will find the Georgians will do. That the issue of depending solely on the gas that is coming from Russia is not a do or die affair. They must always find an alternative, because there's always an alternative to every other thing. And they will look for an alternative to sustain them, because they have a cause. The cause they have is a cause that they want to remain united. The cause they have, the cause that they want to be free from that shackles of Russia. Because the law is there, it's trying to strangulate them. Because the law is there, making things more difficult for them, as it were. You see a situation where you have first of all, the level agents of foreign influence, and then those legal entities, civil society groups and others who would have agitated. Government is looking for an avenue to ensure that they cut short their activities, and by bringing laws that will strangulate them, or in the name that their activities are sponsored by foreign influence. But you also find out that those foreign organizations or NGOs, as it were, will always play their role to ensure that they survive, notwithstanding the situation they find. The gas we are talking about, the other parts of the world, we are talking about the gas. Are they not survive? Accepted that today you have shortage of gas because of the war going on between Russia and Ukraine. But that has not completely affected, because people must find an alternative.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Barrister. Reverend, I'm going to have your last line, rather, because we have Don Felix Osareme to really say his own part of this particular discussion. So if we take a look at the situation right now, is it stalemate, or the Georgian citizens will prevail against the House? Because it's about the law versus the people right now as it stands, briefly.
Well, I think it's going to be a stalemate, but one side must win later. But I pray that the people's will wins.
All right.
But let's see one of the things that the Russia is afraid of. Russia is afraid of the fact that if Georgia, just like Ukraine, are separated, they have the
NATO.
NATO.
Yes.
They have military strategic deployment, and they're afraid that that is the closest thing to Russia. So the government is afraid of that, and they want to be sure that no European military, NATO military base is close to where they are. But you can fight for a period. You can't fight forever.